PR Connections Radio presents.
Did you know your clothing could help balance your body's pH levels? Our cutting-edge fabric technology naturally promotes optimal pH balance, helping you feel energized, refreshed, and at your best every day. Use promo code PRTalk for more info. Tap the link in the description or contact our experts at 702-445-9488 to learn more.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another great episode that I enjoy talking, Liberating Menopause. Here I am focusing on the women in the workplace, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you, PR Connections Radio, for posting this live broadcast and bringing it to the world. I'm so excited to be a part of this community, and so thank you so much for when you do view this or hear me speak. It's very exciting. And I really want to open these conversations up because these are hidden stories that we live with, we grow through, we process through. But today it's all about really, what does that pause mean? I mean, menopause comes for a reason, and we're always talking hormones and fluctuations and different challenges women go through. But that pause, I mean, there really is a reason for the pause, and it really has something to do with healing. But in today's world, culturally, we're being programmed in a way where we feel like if you rest, that's laziness. I mean, because we've been pushing through, and I know that for the 45 years that I pushed through, technology was changing, and a lot of evolution was happening in the medical field. So the more I went through it, by the time I was ready to exit it, we came into high technology called 3D imaging. So with this new imaging modality in mammography, the timing had changed. So back in the 80s, here's when we were just doing regular mammography machines. The 1980s was a big crossover for the field in mammography and technology that we transitioned. We finally found our groove, how this was going to process. FDA came in, we started having state inspections, and now we're being monitored. There were new rules being applied, things were changing and being reorganized. And so because we were preparing for a new technology, and that was the crossover back in the 80s when we left, pretty much like dipping, doing our own processing. Now we have automatic processors. All these things started speeding up. But as I left the field, and in today's world, in the 80s, you had at least 30 minutes to do a routine mammogram screening. And that's welcoming your woman in, interviewing, having time with her, doing your 4 pictures, and then releasing her. And then you have time to do your paperwork. Well, now today, because technology went into the 3D imaging, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot faster. But at the same time, now the technologists, we were getting programmed into 7 minutes for each patients, because the screening technique in how the machine was processing, all the developing was going into digital film, right? Digital imaging. So there was no processing. There wasn't any pauses to stop, wait for your films to come through the developer. You didn't have any of those advantages anymore. At the time, because that's just the way life looked and was, working, you didn't really expect to see, wow, when it disappeared, how much time you really had waiting for that film to process. And in that moment, you could be having a drink of coffee or whatever, you need to do, because you're waiting for your films to come out. And now it's so instant, and the women have to roll right in and roll right out. And there's actually mammography sites that I look at on Facebook, and you hear how the girls today are really increasing because the patient load has increased, because the medical side of it is turning into big business. It's more of that business instead of more of the care that we used to provide as far as giving you the time. Now it's just really in and out, and it's a process, it's a production. But again, if you were to rest, if you look like you were resting, that looks like, you're lazy. Because if you're working in an imaging center and you have 3 or 4 girls on the team and now you stop to slow down for a minute, it's like you're not picking up your speed. You're not really working in this production. You should have had 3 people under your belt at that point, but you stopped. So, but it doesn't mean that it could be laziness. I mean, really, what happens is we as women need to learn to try to pace ourselves and try to bring up little breaks inside because of the healing moments that are taking place. I mean, we know when we're in cycle, we know when we're in transition or preparing for a cycle, we know how we're feeling. We know once the cycle begins how, in perimenopause years from 35 to at least 48, we're going to be going through a lot of different changes, and we know how we're feeling, but taking time for ourselves is the big problem. I know you hear a lot about that meditation and that mindset and the mentality of really taking a stroll outside to really regroup and regenerate. We never had to focus on this part of our lives as much as we do today because of ever since COVID came in and really showed up of how all this mental upsets and imbalances were occurring, all showed up then. So it really made it loud. It really screamed out loud about how we have to nourish our brains. We're not sleeping well. We're not there's times in a day that you could have so much creativity happening, but we're blocking and blurring all that out because we're pushing through everything. We are ignoring the signals that we need to relax ourselves and rest, because not only after being at work all day and what we've rushed through, now we get home and we still have to push through some more. And until we go to bed, that could be really late at night, and then we're getting up. And so running through the day without recognizing who we are in that day is really the problem that's occurring and damaging us more. I'm going to bring you another story. And this woman, it's really hard to know that this is what the journey she had to face. So she's a growing girl. She decided to, she was a she did a lot of different tasks. She, did hairdressing, and she did some creative things in her life where she was making baskets and doing these things, and flowers. She would take apart flowers and work with a flower shop. I mean, it was like, I've never seen anybody work so hard in their life doing all kinds of multitasking little jobs to, meet the bills, fit the bills, or find her place in this world where she wants to be, and pushing through a lot of things. By the time she's coming over, I'd say about 55 now, after going through all that, pushing her body, having her kids, raising everybody, getting them through the system, having her mother who she had to caretake for also, all these different things had piled up on her. But because of ignoring all the signals and not recognizing them, and maybe, because we do recognize them, we do know when we're hurting, we do know that, gosh, I wish I could really, just stay home. I wish I could just stop. We feel that, but then the other side of us says, no, you got to go. You need this. You got to do that. And so there we go. We get up, we push through it, and we know that we're tired, and we know our eyes want to sleep. So, not being rewarded for our hormonal intelligence. The system, it's all hustle and it's all hustle. So this woman that I'm speaking on, she went through all these things, and now she was getting ready to celebrate her 60th birthday. And so that day came, and with that day, suddenly she didn't like to sleep. She never had time for that because, she's a baker. So she has to have all these different dozens of, let's say, brownies that she makes all ready for, the bakers that she's going to go drop it off or whatever restaurants that she delivers to. All these things have to be set besides the orders that are coming in, and just pushing through it and pushing through it, really wanting to make this business big and really, become, because she was real creative in her cooking and she loved it. And the design of the cookies that she's making and the brownies and all that was just so heartfelt for her. She really felt that she made it to where she wants to be. Now she's going to take this passion and really roll with it and really use this as her future, grow it into that. Well, she hit 60 years old, and unfortunately, she got into like a small little car accident where they bumped her from behind. And when this happened, this woman, she never really wanted to go to the doctors and check herself in, just to go get those checkups, because again, there's no time. She didn't like drinking water, didn't understand that, but she didn't like drinking water, so she never did. She just hated it. It tastes like metal to her all the time. I mean, no teas, no nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard. This is going to be hard for the future of her body, because to sustain life like that is not going to be real credible, especially, for anybody, but woman at this point in age. And so she flies all around in her car from one end of the city to the other end. The things that I would see and hear about, I couldn't even imagine how that hustle was. Barely sleeping, getting back up at 3 a.m. Her body, she just never had a good timing system for her body to go to sleep, because she just had to keep pushing through. So then this car accident happens to her, and then she goes to get examined. And unfortunately today, there's a lot of disturbance in the body, and it's so sad because it's all skeletal. She knew she was having some neck aches. She knew she was having some back aches, and there was problems happening. But again, pushing through it, because being a single woman, carrying through, kids are all grown, but she has to keep creating and making to live her life, pay her mortgage, build that business that she wants. And so the energy that, pulls inward was destroying her, with the fatigue, the anxiety, the clouded feeling in the brain, right? Your body, your hormone messenger center is just being ignored totally. And no checkups at the doctor, so you don't even see what your balance is in life. So living life and not studying yourself in action is so crucial, because studying yourself in action is really what gives you the determination and understanding of how your body's growing and developing by taking breaks on certain things. And I'll get into that in a moment. But so her whole life has changed. Remember, I told you she didn't like to sleep. She didn't have a regular system of sleeping because of the ups and downs. She had to keep jumping up to get things done. Today, now, after that accident, and it wasn't major, which was a good thing, but it was enough to react and set this domino effect off in her body. And so now she has to sleep because she's on the muscle relaxers. So now the whole idea about my conversation is that when we don't pay attention to these things, the body will react on you. And if you didn't pay attention when it was signaling you and trying to tell you, stop, take a break, think about this, don't push it. But we do. There will be that day that the body will say, okay, I tried, I warned you, I did this, and now I have to take over. And now you're going to have to listen to me. And that's what happened with her. She has to listen to her body now. She has to sleep. And she this whole system of her slowing down and shutting down in this way where she has no control anymore. She's up for neck surgery, and she still has to have lower back surgery because unfortunately the whole spine has been overloaded, worked, no attention was being taken care of inside the body. So none of these problems were being recognized, even though the signals were there. And now that it's been put on imaging film and MRIs and then unfortunately, she went through different exams and not biopsies. she went for some injections to relieve some of the pain, and then she had a reaction to that. There's so many different symptoms that are happening to her, and she just turned 60 years old. And that's the whole sad part, is that, she was really thriving and striving to really do this. Had it not been for that little accident that initiated this whole domino effect that was really taking place, one way or the other, the body was going to break down and bring this to her attention. And unfortunately, this is how it did it. And now, again, like I said, she cannot work as much. The schedule cannot continue the way it was. She cannot keep baking and having all that stuff. The bending down, the lifting of those trays, all these things are starting to have an effect. And, when you're baking, you have a lot of kneading, and, there's a lot of upper body work that's affecting your neck and your structures. And, so that has to be painful. Plus, she has carpal tunnel. I mean, so many things. Now, this wasn't a woman that you would have thought this was going to be happening to unless you really knew her story. And after hearing the story, you have to think, wow, any day now, because it's hanging on a thread. It's balancing. It was trying, and the body really wants to default to healthy. It doesn't want to be sick. But like that domino effect, it just tipped over, and now she's going through a lot of changes. She's on medication. Actually, she started drinking water, which I'm really happy about. But the changes that she's going through, and to think now she's getting ready to go through a surgical process for her neck. And then eventually she has to think about what she's going to do to her lower back. And she just walked into the doors of 60. So the beginning of what is going to be complicated as she develops in this decade is going to be hard, and hopefully she'll persevere by doing some things that are going to credit the body with, getting into some type of form of Pilates or physical therapy to help rebuild and restructure her, to help her develop a new form of living and trying to still do what she wants to do as far as her baking and everything. But it's going to be a whole new route. It's going to be a whole new road. And it's a road that, if nobody has ever been on to actually tell her how it's going to look. This is something that has to be through self-discovery as she takes this journey that she's on now, that, the body had to force her into. And it's hard because as active as she was, to hear the disappointments in, how she's feeling right now and how she has to take care of herself. That's the hardest part, because we always feel like superwomen. We always want to keep going and we want to keep pushing through. And it's not real beneficial for us. The more we know about menopause, the more we learn about our hormonal structures, the more we see the deterioration that's taking place in this phase, because that's what's happening. It has to, it's like a blossom off a flower, you have to shed all this before you can clean it out and regrow that flower. And so that's what's happening right now in our lives. And the pain, and I was telling you, the healing process, because of our fluctuations and changes that take place, are going to take longer. And then the more we mature, it's going to take longer. So when you're working in the world today with the new cultural programming, where it's a lot more busier and it's a lot more faster, even though we are slowing down, and we don't want to slow down. There were so many women that were returning back to their work in radiology at the age of 70, and the technology had changed and the way they had to process the work. And a lot of seniors at that age are not real techie with the computers, and then they're more intimidated by that, because that's going to slow them down. So many things that want to go faster are going to slow us down if we're not up to date on all these things. So you could think about the women who are returning back to work for whatever reasons. They have to come back in, and hopefully, once you step out, you step out. But these are the things that really happen and challenge us, because when we don't take that pause. Say, for instance, the workplace of the medical field. I mean, that's a really high stress game. I mean, the nurses, the doctors, the therapists, those workers, that's a big 24-hour, 7 nonstop service. I mean, holidays, I mean, every day is consumed with business. There's never a, real day off. And especially for the dedication of the doctors and the nurses who have to be there. And then you have to think of the shortages where a nurse has 5 patients to her when she should only have 3, and the fast pace that they have to go through. But the pressure and keeping up with all that and the programming, there's a lot of reframing that we really need to do if we really want to come back into harmony for our years of retirement. And that's what this is all about, really bringing you. There's the energy that pulls inward, and that could be the fatigue, and all the focus is harder. It's harder on our bodies. But then there's that flow of energy that moves forward, and that's when we become creative, and that's when we become, we have that outburst of energy that comes to us. But that has to come from the nurturing and the downtime that we take for ourselves. Looking for that in your day is so important. And if you're sitting there listening to that, can you really reflect and think about how much time do you give yourself, just yourself? I mean, it's like how much time, if we had to look at, if that was put on a receipt and we wanted to see everything that you charged on it for your day, well, do we see anything that said, I took an hour, I took 3 hours for myself? Self is so important. That self-care, that self-love, that self-healing can only come from you taking the time to respect your healing with your body, even though we do have all this extra pressure on us, the working with, the job, the working with the family, and, the exceptions that have to come into caregiving in the family, because that's a new line of work that's really growing and growing. I mean, in other cultures, that's the trait. That's been engraved in people, so they know that this is coming. But there's a lot of us that don't have that in our culture. So when this happens to us, it's a real kind of shock to the schedule that we're already on when we find out that, oh my gosh, they're going to be coming here, next week? And I've been doing all this, and now you have to rethink that. And imagine if there was women who are just having a baby or their second child, and they're running that schedule, and then they find out somebody's coming to give them an extra chore, caretaking. So it's really important to really understand that by embracing the pause and really understanding that it's all for you and nobody's thinking of you. So you really got to think of you, because the world is going so fast. And the way things are changing right now, it's even more unsettling, because so many programs are being dismissed. So many things are changing in the healthcare system. So many insurances. I mean, one woman told me that she had a doctor's appointment and she was so startled. She hadn't been to the doctor in 2-3 years, I think she said. And then she found out that she had to make 5 separate appointments for different things that she wanted to have and talk about, instead of having that one. And again, because the timing in the healthcare system, it's all being run on a computer, and then the doctor comes in, she sees you, discusses a few things with you. But if you don't really have your catalog of what you want to talk about, you're going to end up walking out of there, and you'll have some answers, but it won't be the questions that you had for her to ask. So really, again, taking the time to think about when you're going to get that doctor's appointment, having those questions ready. It's all about the time, the pause that you take for yourself on whatever journey you're about to do. Even if you just got home from work, running and starting to do everything else, there has to be a breather in between, because our whole world today is really relying on that meditation. We really all need to come into ourselves so that we continue to grow in this world with the technology changes and develop a new line of living for ourselves, because this is the new lifestyle. And when I came into this 6th decade, there wasn't a lot of people that can really tell me how to live it, because from the people that I did see that lived it, they, had a lot of different imbalances in, health and the service and things like that. Again, the women that I did grow up with, they didn't have all the technology and advantages of things that we know today. So some of my friends at that age, they're really there's some type of health issue or something. So again, this isn't a road that you can really learn. You have to learn it on your own once you hit here. When you turn 21, you find out you got your license, you can go drinking at the bars, and you learn all these things, right? You turn 30 years old, you have children, you have baby showers, you have this, you learn all that. But when you turn 60, that's usually when those conversations change, because everybody's different in that 66th decade. And it's just a road that you have to go on. And when you step out of work, you have to defrost for a little while, because some of those ailments that you push through are going to show up. And if you continue pushing through instead of stopping to take a gap year, I believe that's a good time to take a gap year, is when you go into that retirement, when you go to rediscover yourself in this new world, because time isn't your master anymore. You have all the time in the world. I mean, if you want to go to bed at 9 and get up at 3 and start your day, that's what you can do, but a long time ago, if you got up at 3, you'd be hysterical because you got to go to work. So living free of time and controlling it at the same time in your own life, bringing in balance. This is the whole importance about where this world is speeding up with technology, and we need to slow down. And it's not going to be something we're going to look bad about. We should be empowered by that moment of refueling, because menopause is all about healing. And when you go into that post-menopausal stage, you want to be free and ready to live. And a lot of healing has taken place, and that door has already closed, that past, because you've stepped out of it already. You want to seal it. And, very rarely do you want to really relive all that stuff, because that's just going to put another downer on the free life that you're starting to live today in a happy harmony of, your new lifestyle. And that's where everybody should be headed to, instead of, dragging and thinking that, oh my gosh, all these years of working and now I can't do this. And like I said, my person that I was talking about, all her injuries and everything, you have to sit there and think, what if I would have listened then when I was 58 and I first heard the signals? What happens if I would have trained myself to sleep on the correct schedule instead of be up and down and totally throw off your body clock, when, at that time, you really need that clock on time? Those are the signals and things that, can really change our lives and have a big effect on our health. So being focused on, if you're going to speed up in the system, you have to learn to take a moment to slow down and know that it's more power for you. That's where you're going to go get more creative in those moments when you're taking time, rethinking, thinking things about your future, thinking how you want that future to look. Because women, we don't really, you have to, while you're working above ground, there has to be something fueling you underground that's going to eventually break out when you're ready to hit that retirement. Because fueling that energy of what you're creating for that next life, if it's all involved in your work of the day and then the home life and all that stuff, that's where those dreams become broken. We were just talking about this on my last podcast about reigniting those dreams and remembering what they were. Because without that, there's nothing that you're fueling underneath. You're only fueling a life to live right now. And that's great, but you will have another life to live later. And having that planning and preparing for it right now while you're working, little things that you do on a daily basis can be one little pointer that you can put in your basket and preserve for the next day. Because little by little, I used to call it my basket of kisses. I gain a lot of good points throughout my for 10 years of a decade, and I gain, and I call it my basket of kisses, and throw them all in there. There'd be a lot of hard rocks because there was a lot of bad things also that went into that basket. But by the time the decade was ending, I'd empty out that junk and just continue on my life with the good kisses that were in that basket. So that, because they're the ones that are going to fire me up for that next decade, and it carries on and carries on, and it's a repeat, because here I am today living a lot of things that I was striving for at the time. I was digging down deep, figuring out, how do I get to talk? How do I get to get on stage? How do I get to go speak? How, there's a lot you have to figure out, and you don't want to figure it out right when you get there, because then you have a lot of preparation. But then you start looking at the timing and think that, oh my gosh, I'm going to start this now. Then you start looking at your age, which is not a thing today, because honestly, there's a lot more, so much ageless and so much beauty in that, because people are being more creative, ready to walk out, ready to dream, ready to open up those dreams that they've been having. So when you're at work, thinking about these things that you're doing, try to think of some kind of little tidbit that you got out of your day, because everyone has a story for sure, but it's the stories that you're hearing, whether it's, in your corporate world and things that you're, learning how to build that conference, lecture, those are little notes. Those are little things that, if that's the type of exercise you're going through repetitiously, eventually that can mean something that you can build on for that future. I mean, whatever that is, if you step out to be a woman who helps people create lectures, you already have that background, because you were typing it up all the time, listening to those conferences, creating conferences, getting those catchphrases, things like that. There's, in everything that we do, there's a way to prosper from it by building off of it. And it's like making money off of other people's money. You know what I mean? But in business, and fueling yourself for this energy to continue on working, that's what you're going to be using. You're going to be using other people's energy and their dreams and what they've talked about, and create this vision for yourself of what you want to be. There has to be things that we're seeing. And I hope that you do have clarity on this road and this journey that you're in. This next conference that we're going to be having, because menopause isn't all just a very sad and lonely, downward spin. It's not. It's an upward spin. It's taking you higher than you've ever been, because when you come back from it and you're out of it and you're living this new life, it's so empowering. And then when you look back and think of all those challenges that you went through, whether it was the breakups with old relationships or all those things, but what you successfully succeeded through, and you're still living. I mean, there could be deadlines that you thought you were never going to meet, and the next day you met that deadline and you woke up and said, it's over. I survived it. I made it. And, it's just like looking at a gallon of milk. There's an expiration date. Even if you have to set a timing on that, if I can get this done before that milk expires, it's going to be a great day. And so having small little challenges in your life is so exciting, especially when you're adding them all up to build that mountain that you're going to climb up to and see a whole different view, because that next level is so beautiful, but you really have to fully be there. And by doing that, again, is not ignoring the pause, because we all as women need a pause, and that's going to be the best benefit you can give yourself, by understanding it's not about anything to be shameful. All those myths that you heard in the past about being broken, and the word menopause has an age, and that means old, and it does not, because I told you it's not. There's no age to it, because women are young when they can have a full hysterectomy, and they're automatically in menopause. So there's no age to it. It's changing that whole mentality and looking forward to that day, because when that ends, oh my gosh, the world that opens up for you is so much more freedom that you're going to enjoy. On our next episode, we're going to be talking about the difference, because we're going to be talking about there's so much beauty in this world and culture that we have to grow up in the working world. And menopause, again, the menstrual cycle and the pause, it's all a harmony, but there's so many little things that we forget. And for instance, today it's so repetitious about taking those selfie pictures. You're always taking selfies, and of course they look good, and then people put filters on and they change the way they look, and it's all, but it's so much repetition that it's like a commercial. When you look at those pictures, I mean, they're just there, and they just stay in your little gallery, and there they are. But what about when you do a portrait picture? When you get a professional photographer to take a picture of you that can really bring out this inner beauty that's inside, and when that focus of the lens shows up and you see yourself and look at that portrait, it's nothing like looking at what a selfie picture looks like from your phone. There's so much more of your story and your original beauty that comes out, that's displayed, and you'd be in awe to see yourself in that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on this next episode, because people start to go invisible. And I want to empower that beauty, because there's so much beauty in us women. And no matter what age it is, no matter what the story's telling us from however we lived our life, when you take a professional picture and when you have the right photographer who tells those stories, that's what I'm going to bring to you. Those kind of dreams on this next episode. And I'm looking forward to that, because it's so creative. And when you see yourself that way, depending, you could be 45 years old. We don't stop and think, why is it we only take professional pictures for a wedding or for a baptismal or for, some type of graduation, right? Sometimes you'll call a photographer, but not always. But, those weddings and things like that. Why do we do that? Because it has a different image, right? And, I'm always imaging you from the inside out, and this is the beauty I want to bring. So I'm looking forward to sharing this next episode with you and my next guest that'll be with me. And I hope you really do take that moment and really understand we all need a pause. We all need a pause, men and women, but women for sure. Take that pause and enjoy a day of just being you. Everyone, thank you so much. It's just such a pleasure to be here. And again, prradioconnections.com. It's always a pleasure to be hosting on your station. So, Liberating Menopause. I'm your host, Lisa Vasquez, and thanks again for joining me. Have a great week.
This podcast is brought to you by Envision U. Envision U has discovered how to impact spirit, body, and soul with spray technology in just 30 seconds. With Envision U, you can achieve optimal health and start living the life you have always dreamed of. Use the promo code EnvisionU.com/VernDix to take control of your health naturally. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.